Daniel Fletcher never expected his life to turn upside down on a damp Thursday afternoon. A single father grappling with overdue bills and a broken-down car, he only wanted an affordable replacement from the local dealership. Instead, he found himself standing up for a woman he'd never met, witnessing her being unfairly kicked out of the showroom. Little did he know that her story and the gleaming Rolls-Royce she quietly owned would bring unimaginable twists to his own. This fateful meeting would spark a tale of heartbreak, resilience, and redemption that spanned cities, united strangers, and forever changed the course of Daniel's life. Daniel Fletcher rose before dawn in his cramped Detroit apartment, determined to salvage yet another day. Overdue rent notices cluttered his kitchen table, and his 6-year-old daughter, Amelia, slept soundly in the adjacent room. Each morning, he gazed at her small frame sprawled on the cot, feeling both deep love and a pang of failure. The shower ran cold, like everything else in his life. His prized 2002 sedan had finally died, forcing him to ride the bus across town in search of a used car he could barely afford. He arrived at Jerry Klein's lot, known for cheap vehicles of questionable quality. Eager salesman Marcus greeted him, boasting no credit, no problem. But Daniel's mind buzzed with anxiety. His credit was abysmal, his savings practically gone, and his hours at the logistics warehouse barely covered food and childcare. As they started discussing rusted sedans and risky loan plans, a commotion outside drew Daniel's attention. He spotted a tall, distraught woman confronting a junior salesman. Her name, he soon learned, was Cassandra Moore. She stormed into the cramped office, demanding to speak with Jerry Klein about a broken-down car she'd purchased under warranty. Marcus tried to dismiss her, insisting she leave if she wasn't a serious buyer. Cassandra's anger looked genuine. This wasn't a tantrum, but a desperate plea for fairness. Unable to ignore her distress, Daniel followed when she was rudely escorted out. He found her standing near the dealership's exit, her eyes brimming with tears she refused to let fall. Concern trumped his own worries. He asked if she had a ride or someone to call. She shook her head. Her funds were depleted, and she felt utterly alone. Without hesitation, Daniel offered to buy her a coffee from the nearby cafe. Sitting in the dingy shop, they commiserated over thin wallets and big responsibilities. Cassandra explained how she'd arrived from Indiana after losing her job, investing her last savings into a used car that turned out to be a lemon. Now she stood on shaky ground, unable to fight Jerry's refusal to cover repairs. Daniel listened, empathizing with her story of setbacks. Their conversation was brief, but charged with a shared sense of survival. After they parted, Daniel returned to the office, forcing himself to sign a punishing loan for a battered Nissan. The interest rate soared, but he had no other option. Jerry Klein, smug in his handshake, assured Daniel it was the best deal he could get. Daniel, sensing Cassandra's pain and reflecting on his own, felt a twinge of guilt even as he accepted the keys. Little did he know that fleeting encounter with Cassandra would soon unravel into a whirlwind of confrontations, revelations, and an unlikely alliance, one that would redefine both of their lives in ways neither could have predicted. Outside, the sky was the color of lead. The wind cut through Daniel's thin jacket, but he approached Cassandra nonetheless. She was staring at the street as if contemplating whether to leave or run back inside. "Hey," Daniel said softly, "is everything okay?" She turned, startled, and wiped at her cheeks with the back of her hand. Up close, Daniel noticed lines of exhaustion around her eyes. She looked like someone who had fought too many battles in too short a time. "I'm fine," she replied curtly. But there was gratitude in her expression. Just, "These people are crooks. I trusted them, and they sold me a car that was practically falling apart. Then they refused to fix anything under warranty." "I'm sorry," Daniel offered. "It was inadequate, But what more could he say? These dealerships can be like that. I spent my last savings on that down payment, she continued, her frustration ebbing into resignation. Now they're telling me I have to leave or they'll call the cops. Unbelievable. Daniel felt a surge of protectiveness. She clearly wasn't in a place to handle more stress. He reached into his pocket. He had only a few dollars and some coins. Not much help. Do you have someone you can call? A ride home? Cassandra sighed, shaking her head. I live across town. I took the bus. I'm not exactly rolling in money right now. He almost laughed grimly at the shared predicament. He wasn't exactly rolling in money either. Look, I can't do much, but at least let me get you a coffee or something. It's freezing out here. She studied him for a moment, as if gauging his intentions. Finally, she nodded. All right. Coffee sounds good. But that place, she gestured at the dealership, I'm done with them. If you can find a decent car here, good luck. They walked to a cheap cafe half a block away, where the smell of burnt coffee and day-old pastries dominated. The furniture was worn, the overhead lights flickered, and the heater seemed perpetually stuck on low. Still, it was better than the biting cold outside. Over 2 steaming cups of coffee, Cassandra finally let herself relax. She explained that she had come from Indiana hoping for a new start. She'd lost her job at a small insurance firm after reporting unethical practices. With little savings, she'd come to Detroit to look for new opportunities. The used car fiasco had just added another layer of stress to her life. Daniel listened intently, occasionally offering nods or comments, but mostly letting her vent. He knew what it was like to have nowhere to turn. He told her about his daughter, about being behind on rent, about needing a new car just to keep his job. As they spoke, he sensed a spark of mutual respect forming. They both knew the sting of life's punches. Both felt the weight of responsibilities that never seemed to lighten. By the time they finished, Cassandra looked calmer. "Thank you," she said, setting the empty cup down gently. "For listening, I mean. And for the coffee," Daniel offered a small smile. "We all need someone to talk to." Then, after a moment, he checked the time on his phone. Lunch break was almost over, and he still hadn't picked out a car. "I have to get back. I still need to see if I can get a deal. I'm sorry about," she raised a hand. "No, don't be. Thanks again. I'll be okay." He stood, unsure if he should say more. That moment felt strangely significant, like the meeting of 2 souls at a crossroads. "If you need anything. I'm not sure what I can do, but," she smiled, a sincere expression that lit her weary features. "Same goes for you. Good luck." Daniel returned to the dealership. Marcus was in a sour mood, perhaps because Daniel had walked away during negotiations. The cars Daniel could afford were in rough shape. One had a suspicious knocking sound. Another had tears in the upholstery and a check engine light glowing ominously. Still, Daniel was desperate. He haggled as best he could. The monthly payments Marcus proposed were high, but Daniel managed to negotiate them down a little. Finally, he selected a battered Nissan sedan. Its engine sputtered during the test drive, but it was the only thing within his limited budget. Marcus ushered Daniel into the cramped finance office. The walls were plastered with motivational posters that felt like mockery. There, Jerry Klein himself, a tall man with slicked back hair and a smug grin, slid the contract across the desk. Daniel skimmed it carefully. The interest rate was staggering, nearly triple what a normal bank loan would be. But with his poor credit and limited options, he felt cornered. He closed his eyes, imagining Amelia's sweet face, the rent, the groceries. Sighing, he picked up the pen. He had to take the plunge. There was no better deal in sight. As he was about to sign, Jerry sneered, "Don't let what happened with that Cassandra woman scare you off. She was just some con artist." Daniel froze mid-signature. "Con artist?" Jerry nodded. "She came in all high and mighty a month ago, complaining about mechanical issues. She demanded we fix them for free, as if that's how business works. Then she started throwing around accusations, threatening to call some big-shot attorney. He shook his head. "We don't need that kind of customer. They're trouble." A wave of anger coursed through Daniel. He remembered Cassandra's tears, her earnest frustration. Jerry's condescension was insulting, but Daniel needed a car too much to risk an argument now. Setting his jaw, he forced himself to remain calm as he scrawled his name on the dotted line. The handshake that followed felt dirty, but Daniel's new set of keys rested in his palm. The Nissan's fender rattled when he turned the ignition, and a puff of dark smoke drifted from the exhaust as he pulled away. "At least I can get to work," he told himself, ignoring the knot in his stomach. That night, after picking up Amelia, Daniel barely slept. Between his meager bank account balance and the new car payment, he worried how they'd make it through the month. His shift at the logistics center started early the next day. With Amelia to feed and no plan B in sight, he had no choice but to keep moving forward. After work, he hurried to a second job interview at a small grocery store. The pay wasn't great, but it might fill in the gaps. As he pulled into the grocery store's parking lot, the Nissan service engine's soon light began to blink. Cursing under his breath, he parked, determined to ignore the sign. He'd just gotten the car, and he couldn't afford a repair yet. The interview was brief, the manager non-committal, but Daniel hoped for the best. As he walked out, he spotted a Rolls-Royce Phantom gliding into the lot. The sight jarred him. It was a gleaming silver, an absolute contrast to the broken asphalt and dull surroundings of the store. The windows were tinted and the bodywork flawless. Daniel found himself momentarily stunned by the sheer extravagance of such a vehicle in a modest part of town. Then the driver's door opened and Cassandra Moore stepped out. He blinked. Was he seeing things? She looked different, still wearing simple clothes, but now radiating a confidence he hadn't witnessed before. She noticed him almost immediately and smiled, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "Daniel?" He approached slowly, eyes darting from her to the Rolls-Royce. Hi. Cassandra, right? That's a nice ride." She glanced at the car, then back at him, her cheeks coloring slightly. "It's a long story," she said. "You have time to grab coffee again?" Daniel hesitated. He should head home to Amelia, but curiosity got the better of him. "I can spare a few minutes." This time, they went to a chain cafe inside the grocery store. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery section wafted in. They found a table in a quiet corner. Before Daniel could ask about the Rolls-Royce, Cassandra began. "I know it looks crazy," she said, eyes fixed on her coffee cup. "But that's my father's old car. He passed away a year ago, left me a few things, but I didn't want anything to do with it. My father, James Moore, ran a small tech firm in Indiana. He was successful, but let's just say we didn't have the best relationship. I moved away, tried to build my own life. When he died, I inherited some of his estate, but all that money is tied up in legal proceedings because of other family members contesting the will. So I'm not swimming in cash. But I did manage to get this Rolls-Royce, basically the only thing that wasn't contested. Until recently, I kept it in storage because, well, it reminded me of him. Then my old car died, and I had no choice." Daniel let her words sink in. She wasn't a con artist. She was an heiress in a legal battle, forced to drive a super luxury car while struggling financially. The absurdity of it all was striking. He finally asked, "Then why were you at Jerry Klein's place buying a used car?" She gave a derisive laugh. "Because I thought it'd be safer. Parking a Rolls-Royce in some parts of Detroit is like painting a target on yourself. Plus, I wasn't keen on the stairs, the assumptions. But that used car was a piece of junk, and the dealership refused to honor their warranty. So I had no choice but to take the Rolls out of storage." A pang of empathy struck Daniel. He knew how society judged people at a glance. People likely assumed Cassandra had a fortune at her disposal. They couldn't see the baggage that came with the name Moore. "I'm sorry you've been through all that," he said. "I understand tough family situations." She nodded, focusing on him now. "How about you? Any luck with a car?" He swallowed hard. "Yes and no. I signed a terrible deal with Jerry. The car's already showing warning lights, but I didn't have any other options." Her jaw clenched, clearly angered by Jerry's business practices. "I should have sued him," she muttered. "Still might." They parted ways soon after, exchanging phone numbers this time. The last thing she said before leaving stuck with Daniel. "If you ever need help, call me. I'm not always sure how to navigate my own mess, but I'd like to help you if I can." Over the next few days, Daniel tried to juggle everything: Amelia's school, his job at the warehouse, and the looming car payments. The Nissan sputtered on daily commutes, making him dread the day it would finally give out. He ended up calling Cassandra occasionally, not for money, but for advice. She was surprisingly savvy about finances and pointed him toward a few local non-profits that offered budgeting classes and short-term assistance. In return, Daniel listened when Cassandra vented about the ongoing family feud. She revealed that her father, James Moore, had an ex-business partner, Stephen Redwood, who was challenging the will. Redwood claimed that James owed him millions in back pay and intellectual property rights, effectively freezing much of the inheritance. Cassandra spoke of depositions, lawyers, and court documents, all swirling into a quagmire of stress. They met for coffee a handful of times, always casual, always within Daniel's limited schedule, but enough to forge a deeper bond. She even came to see Amelia once, bringing a small stuffed bunny as a gift. Amelia warmed to Cassandra immediately, charmed by her gentle smile and kind demeanor. One crisp afternoon, as Daniel was about to clock out from the logistics center, he got a frantic call from his neighbor, Miss S. Rodriguez. Amelia had come home from school with a high fever. She was burning up and too weak to move. Panic flared in Daniel. His boss gave him the rest of the day off, but his car was acting up again, this time with an ominous grinding sound under the hood. Fearful of a breakdown on the freeway, he dialed Cassandra. She answered on the first ring. Within 15 minutes, the unmistakable purr of the Rolls-Royce pulled up outside the warehouse. Daniel jumped in, grateful beyond words. They raced across town to his apartment. As soon as he saw Amelia, pale and shivering on the couch, he knew they had to get to a hospital. Cassandra held Amelia's hand as Daniel scooped her into his arms. They drove to the emergency room, the Rolls-Royce drawing double takes from passers-by. Inside, nurses and doctors bustled around them, hooking Amelia up to IVs and running tests. Daniel paced the waiting area, sweat beading on his forehead despite the hospital's chilly air conditioning. Cassandra stayed by his side, occasionally offering a comforting pat on his shoulder. Hours later, the doctors concluded Amelia had a severe case of the flu, exacerbated by dehydration. She would need to stay overnight for observation. Daniel sank into a plastic waiting room chair, relief and exhaustion washing over him. Cassandra sat next to him, silent support in the fluorescent-lit corridor. That night, as they watched Amelia finally doze off, Daniel felt a warmth toward Cassandra he hadn't felt for anyone in a long time, a kind of closeness that forms only when people face life's hardest moments together. The morning after Amelia's health scare, Daniel realized just how dire his financial situation was. The hospital bills would be massive, even with the modest insurance coverage from his job. Cassandra offered to pay, but Daniel politely declined. He couldn't stomach the idea of accepting money from her, not when she was dealing with her own troubles. However, by the end of the week, the strain on Daniel's finances became undeniable. His meager savings evaporated after making the first payment on the Nissan. The second job at the grocery store never materialized. They'd hired someone else. Rent was due in a matter of days. When he went to Jerry Klein's dealership, to complain about the car's mechanical failures. He was greeted by a stone-faced Marcus. Jerry refused to even speak with Daniel, sending Marcus to deliver a blunt message: no repairs without full payment. Furious but powerless, Daniel left with nothing resolved. That evening, after dropping off Amelia at Mrs. Rodriguez's, Daniel walked into a cramped legal aid office. A volunteer attorney named Grace Caldwell, a petite woman in her 30s, heard his story. She shook her head in disgust at the contract he'd signed. "They prey on desperation," she explained. "But there might be a loophole. Let me see if we can argue breach of warranty or something along those lines." Desperate for any hope, Daniel thanked her. On his way out, he nearly bumped into a man in the corridor, a client leaving the office. To Daniel's shock, it was Kevin, the junior salesman from Jerry Klein's dealership. Kevin recognized Daniel, eyes widening. "Hey," Kevin said, glancing around nervously. You didn't see me here." Daniel frowned. "What's going on? You work at Jerry's place, right?" Kevin sighed, looking down at his shoes. "Not anymore. I quit. Or maybe I got fired. Jerry runs dirty deals, man. I couldn't stand it anymore. That's why I'm here, talking to the legal people about an employment claim." Daniel's mind raced. This could be an opportunity. "Kevin, you saw how they treated me. My car is falling apart. Is there anything you can do or say to help my case?" Kevin hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Look, I can't promise anything, but I have some documents files about repairs that never got done, false claims on warranties, that sort of thing. I'm not sure it'll help you specifically, but it might show a pattern of fraud." They exchanged phone numbers, and Kevin promised to send what he had. A flicker of hope ignited in Daniel's chest. Maybe he had a way out of Jerry's predatory contract. Meanwhile, Cassandra's legal troubles escalated. She told Daniel how her father's former partner, Stephen Redwood, was making moves to block her from receiving any inheritance. Redwood had called on a high-powered lawyer, the kind who specialized in estate battles and had a track record of winning at all costs. Court dates loomed, each one draining Cassandra's emotional reserves. It was during one of these phone calls with Daniel that Cassandra brought up an event, her late father's memorial gala. It was to be held in Indianapolis, a fundraiser for a charity James Moore had supported in his lifetime. Redwood would be there, presumably to make a grand show of benevolence. Cassandra was invited, expected to attend, but she dreaded it. "Would you go with me?" she asked hesitantly over the phone. Daniel froze. "Me? Yeah. I can't face all those people alone. They all pretend to be grieving, but most of them just want a piece of the estate." Daniel thought of the swirl of wealthy businessmen, lawyers, and socialites he'd be thrust among. He felt out of place just imagining it, but he also owed Cassandra for her kindness. She'd helped him more times than he could count. Without overthinking, he said, "Sure, I'll go." The gala was held in a lavish hotel in downtown Indianapolis, a towering structure of marble pillars and crystal chandeliers. Cassandra insisted they drive down together, yes, in the Rolls-Royce. The purr of the engine on the highway was mesmerizing. Amelia stayed with Mrs. Rodriguez for the night, excited for a sleepover. As they arrived, valets in crisp uniforms swarmed the entrance. Daniel took a deep breath, stepping out in a borrowed suit that barely fit. Cassandra wore a simple but elegant black dress, her hair pinned back. Even so, she seemed tense as they walked in. Inside, the ballroom was a spectacle of wealth, black tie guests, live classical music, tables laden with gourmet food, and an open bar stocked with the finest wines. Towering floral arrangements perfumed the air. A huge portrait of James Moore hung near the stage, illuminated by soft lights. Almost immediately, an older man with a hawk-like nose and silver-streaked hair approached. He wore a tailored tuxedo and carried himself with pompous authority. Cassandra, he greeted with a thin smile. I'm so glad you could make it. Stephen, she replied icily. Her gaze flickered to Daniel. This is my friend, Daniel Fletcher. Stephen Redwood barely acknowledged Daniel, his cold eyes lingering a moment before returning to Cassandra. I trust you're doing well? Cassandra forced a polite smile. As well as one can, with a contested will. Stephen let out a mirthless laugh. All in due time, my dear. Your father was a complicated man. It's only fair we examine every aspect of his estate. Daniel's fists clenched. He could see Redwood's arrogance radiating off him. Cassandra held Daniel's arm lightly, cautioning him to remain calm. Redwood excused himself to greet other guests, leaving Cassandra and Daniel standing by the enormous portrait of James Moore. That's the man who's blocking your inheritance? Daniel muttered, trying to keep his voice low. Cassandra nodded. He and my dad co-founded a small software company. When Dad bought out Redwood's shares, Redwood claimed it was an undervalued sale. Now he's back, demanding restitution. Daniel was about to comment when a new voice interrupted. Cassandra, oh my goodness. They turned to see a fashionable woman in her 60s, someone Daniel recognized from television, one of those charity circuit socialites named Evelyn Hastings. She wore a glittering dress and a wide, polished smile. Evelyn greeted Cassandra warmly, though her eyes seemed to survey Daniel with curiosity. In the swirl of the evening, Daniel found himself introduced to more people than he could remember, business partners, old family friends, and distant relatives. He felt out of place, but Cassandra stuck by him, her hand occasionally squeezing his arm to steady her own nerves. The gala's highlight came when Redwood took the stage, microphone in hand, to deliver a speech about James Moore's legacy. He spoke with a reverent tone, praising James's contributions to the tech industry and philanthropic endeavors, conveniently ignoring the bitter legal dispute he'd instigated. Guests applauded politely. Cassandra shifted uncomfortably beside Daniel, her hand trembling in his. She whispered, I can't stand his hypocrisy. When Redwood finished, he made a grand gesture of donating a large sum to the charity, ensuring plenty of cameras flashed and reporters scribbled notes. Cassandra's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent. Later, as the night wound down, Redwood cornered them once more. Cassandra, I'd like to discuss a possible settlement. Something more reasonable for both parties. She squared her shoulders. My attorney will handle any negotiations. He sighed theatrically. I'm merely trying to spare you more grief. And your friend Redwood finally looked at Daniel. The first presume he's your moral support? Daniel opened his mouth to retort, but Cassandra spoke first. Daniel is someone who has more integrity in his little finger than you'll find in this entire room. She glared at Redwood, then walked away, Daniel following close behind. They exited into the chilly night, the Rolls-Royce waiting by the curb. Cassandra paused by the car, exhaling a long, shaky breath. Thank you, she said, for everything tonight. I know this isn't your world, but you helped me keep it together. Daniel reached out, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Anytime. For a brief moment, they locked eyes under the glow of the hotel's entrance lights. Then, wordlessly, they climbed into the Rolls and pulled away from the grand facade, heading back to Detroit's simpler reality. Days after the gala, two significant developments shook Daniel's life. First, Kevin followed through and sent him digital copies of dealership files, purchase records, complaints, memos about refusing warranty work. Daniel forwarded everything to Grace Caldwell, the legal aid attorney. She was stunned by the evidence. This could be huge, she told Daniel over the phone. We might have a class action suit if we find other customers who were similarly cheated. Second, Cassandra called, her voice brimming with excitement. I have news. A judge ruled that Redwood can't freeze all the inheritance. I'm allowed partial access to my funds, pending the final decision. That's great, Daniel said, genuinely happy for her. I want to help you with your car situation, she continued, speaking quickly. Don't say no, please. This is something I can do, and you've been there for me. Let me pay off that scam of a loan and help you get a decent vehicle. Daniel hesitated, the weight of pride and necessity battling inside him. Cassandra, I appreciate it, but I don't want to be a charity case. She sighed. This isn't charity. Consider it a loan if you want. We'll draw up paperwork. But you shouldn't suffer because of Jerry Klein's predatory practices. Finally, Daniel relented. They arranged a meeting with Grace Caldwell. The attorney quickly drafted an agreement, stating that Cassandra would pay off Daniel's loan, effectively buying the Nissan's title outright. Then, Daniel would pay Cassandra back under far more reasonable terms. He'd also be free to join in any lawsuit against the dealership without fear of repossession. The day Cassandra handed Jerry Klein a certified check for the loan payoff was unforgettable. She strode into the dealership in her worn jeans and jacket, head held high. Jerry's eyes nearly popped when he realized she had the means to end Daniel's contract in one fell swoop. Cassandra then coolly informed him that lawyers would be in touch regarding a potential lawsuit. Jerry sputtered, unable to mask his shock and anger. Outside, Daniel watched the scene unfold, a surreal sense of relief flooding him. The Nissan was now under Cassandra's ownership, but he could drive it without the monthly burden. Once the lawsuit was settled, or Daniel got a better job, he could buy something else. For the first time in months, he felt hope. In the midst of these dealership battles, a bigger twist was on the horizon, one that involved that gleaming Rolls-Royce. It happened on a cold Saturday morning. Daniel was at home, making breakfast for Amelia, when his phone rang. Cassandra's frantic voice crackled on the other end. Daniel, I'm in trouble. The Rolls is gone. Stolen. He nearly dropped the spatula. Stolen? From where? I was at a coffee shop in Midtown. I parked it out front, went in for 10 minutes, and when I came out, it was gone. The cops are here. They're taking a report, but I'm freaking out. Daniel remembered how Cassandra worried about driving such a flashy car. She was right. It drew attention, and evidently the wrong kind. Okay, calm down. I'll be there as soon as I can. Sending you a rideshare now. He dropped Amelia off at Mrs. Rodriguez's again and hurried to Midtown by bus, feeling the undercurrent of tension. Cassandra stood on the curb, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes rimmed with red. A police officer was finishing up paperwork. "Ma'am," the officer said, handing her a card. "If we hear anything, we'll let you know. But, well, these high-end cars sometimes end up on chop shop lots. We'll do our best." He walked away, leaving Cassandra looking devastated. Daniel gently put an arm around her. "We'll figure this out." But days turned into weeks, and the Rolls-Royce remained missing. Insurance was slow to process the claim because the car's ownership history was complicated, still technically part of James Moore's estate, with Cassandra as an heir. Redwood tried to spin the theft as her carelessness, fueling rumors that she didn't deserve the estate. Cassandra was devastated. Daniel's life, however, pressed onward. He found a new job at a nearby shipping firm, improving his prospects slightly. The Nissan still rattled but hadn't died yet. And every day he kept in touch with Cassandra, offering moral support. She sank into depression, feeling the weight of the stolen car as one more betrayal in a long line of misfortunes. Then, one afternoon, Daniel was driving home from work when he noticed something odd. A large enclosed trailer parked behind a shady auto repair shop near his neighborhood. The trailer's door was partly open, revealing a silver glint that made Daniel's heart skip a beat. He turned his car around, parked at a safe distance, and crept closer. Inside the trailer, under a flickering bulb, he saw it, the distinctive front grille of a Rolls-Royce Phantom. The same custom detailing Cassandra's father had done the JM monogram etched onto the hood ornament. It was hidden under a tarp, but Daniel knew that shape well. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone, snapping pictures. Adrenaline surged. The thieves were likely planning to strip it for parts or ship it overseas. Not wasting a second, he called the police, urging them to come quickly. He waited in his car, engine off, phone camera trained on the trailer. Minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived. Officers approached the shady auto shop, guns drawn. A tense standoff ensued, but the criminals inside were caught off guard. They tried to flee out a back exit, but backup officers were already there. Within half an hour, the area was swarming with law enforcement. One officer recognized Daniel from Cassandra's initial police report. "You're the guy who called it in?" "Good job," he said, patting Daniel's shoulder. Daniel exhaled the breath he'd been holding. He immediately dialed Cassandra. "I found your car." Cassandra arrived on the scene before the tow truck did. She darted across the police tape, ignoring an officer's calls to slow down. Daniel stood by the trailer, phone in hand. The moment she saw the rolls, tears poured down her face. She hugged Daniel, burying her face in his shoulder. He could feel her shaking with relief. When she finally let go, she stared at the partially dismantled front panel of the car. The thieves had begun removing the tires, the seats, any valuable part, yet it was still recognizable, still salvageable. "I can't believe it," Cassandra said, her voice quivering. "Thank you, Daniel. You saved my dad's car." Daniel, flushed with both relief and pride, couldn't find words for a moment. Finally, he managed, "I just happened to see it. Right place, right time." Within hours, the police had enough evidence to connect the ring of thieves to several luxury car heists. Cassandra's Phantom was secured and towed to a specialized garage for repairs. The insurance company, now with a police report and a recovered vehicle, agreed to cover the damages, albeit with bureaucratic slowness. That evening, as they stood outside the garage where the rolls was being dropped off, Cassandra turned to Daniel. "How can I ever repay you?" He smiled, shaking his head. "I owed you. You helped me with Jerry's loan." She looked into his eyes. "Still, you saved something precious to me. This car might seem like a status symbol, but it was my dad's pride and joy. It's what he used to take me to father-daughter dances when I was little. It's got memories. You helped me keep a piece of him with me." Daniel felt a tug at his heart, recalling his own father who had passed away years ago. The finality of losing someone you love and the longing to hold onto any keepsake. He understood perfectly. Not long after the car's recovery, Cassandra faced a pivotal courtroom showdown with Stephen Redwood. The estate case had progressed to the final hearing, where a judge would determine if Redwood's claims had any merit. Cassandra asked Daniel to attend for moral support, and he readily agreed. The courtroom was packed, Redwood's expensive legal team on one side, Cassandra and her modest attorney on the other. Redwood strutted in, wearing a smug look. He seemed certain of victory. The testimony dragged on for hours. Redwood's team claimed that James Moore had intentionally undervalued Redwood's contributions, making Redwood a victim of fraudulent business practices. Cassandra's attorney countered that Redwood had willingly sold his shares years before and had no claim now. Witnesses were called, documents presented. Daniel watched from the gallery, hands clenched together in silent prayer for Cassandra. As Redwood took the stand, he performed with theatrical flair, painting himself as a loyal partner who was swindled out of his rightful fortune. Finally, Cassandra was called to testify. She stood tall, wearing a simple black suit and a determined expression. She spoke earnestly about her father's business ethic, her own estranged relationship with him, and the fact that Redwood had parted ways with Moore voluntarily. She admitted she didn't always see eye to eye with her father, but Redwood's sudden re-emergence felt purely opportunistic. When Cassandra's attorney produced an email from Redwood, dated shortly after he sold his shares, gloating about how he would retire comfortably thanks to the deal, Redwood's composure cracked. His lawyer tried to dismiss it as an old email taken out of context, but the judge wasn't convinced. 2 days later, the judge delivered the verdict. Redwood's claim was dismissed. He was found to have no legal basis for contesting the estate. Cassandra would receive her rightful inheritance, subject only to the normal probate process. Redwood stormed out of the courtroom, face twisted in rage. Cassandra was awarded full control of her father's estate assets, including financial accounts, property, and of course, the Rolls-Royce. Outside the courthouse, she hugged Daniel so tightly he could barely breathe. "I did it. We did it." He grinned, heart swelling with pride for her. "Congratulations." When the news reporters approached for comments, Cassandra gracefully thanked her legal team, stating simply, "I just wanted the truth to come out. My father and I had our differences, but he worked hard to build what he had. Redwood tried to take advantage of his passing. I'm grateful justice was done." With the estate settled, Cassandra found herself in a position of real financial stability for the first time in her life. She also found purpose in using those resources for good. Instead of diving into luxury, she surprised everyone by launching a foundation in her father's name to help underprivileged kids learn technology and coding, carrying on the philanthropic spirit James Moore had once shown. Meanwhile, Daniel's life also took a positive turn. The class action suit against Jerry Klein gained traction as more victims came forward. With Kevin's insider documents, Grace Caldwell built a strong case. Jerry Klein found himself under serious legal and financial pressure. Word spread, and the used car dealership's shady practices were exposed in local media. While it wouldn't make Daniel wealthy, he stood to receive damages, possibly enough to secure a safer vehicle or even pay off some debts. Amelia's health stabilized, and she bounced back to her playful self. She adored Cassandra, who spent time teaching her how to paint and do crafts. The three of them started forming an unconventional but warm little unit. Even Miss S. Rodriguez would wink at Daniel, insinuating that something more than friendship was blossoming. Yet, with all these changes, Daniel felt overwhelmed. Cassandra, now an heiress in her own right, lived in a new condominium in a better neighborhood. Though she insisted Daniel visit any time, he hesitated, not wanting to appear like he was sponging off her success. But Cassandra wasn't having it. She'd show up at his apartment, ignoring its cramped rooms and peeling paint, bringing home cooked meals or new clothes for Amelia. One evening, as Daniel sat with Cassandra on his worn-out couch, he mustered the courage to ask, "Are you sure you want me in your life? I mean, look at you. You could have a mansion, traveling the world, meeting influential people, and I'm just..." He gestured around the modest apartment. She took his hand, her eyes sincere. "Daniel, you're the one person who never cared about my potential inheritance or family name. You helped me when I was just a stranger being kicked out of a dealership. You found my dad's car. You stood by me in court. You've shown me genuine kindness, and that's something money can't buy. Yes, I want you in my life." They looked at each other for a long moment, the words unspoken yet clear. They had found a bond forged through adversity, a connection anchored in mutual respect and affection. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a rhythm of promise. Cassandra's new foundation, the James Moore Tech Initiative, launched its first program at a local community center. She invited Daniel to join as an outreach coordinator, leveraging his logistics background to handle events and distribution of donated computers. He accepted, feeling a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. Meanwhile, the lawsuit against Jerry Klein concluded in a settlement. The dealership was ordered to pay restitution to dozens of affected customers, including Daniel, who received enough to clear his remaining debts and set aside a bit of savings. The Nissan was still in Cassandra's name, but as part of their personal arrangement, Daniel now had a path to eventually own a more reliable vehicle. In a small but poignant ceremony, Cassandra's father's Rolls-Royce was fully restored. She invited Daniel and Amelia to see it gleaming in the mechanic's shop. As the engine purred once more, they all laughed, remembering its harrowing theft. Cassandra placed Amelia in the driver's seat for a fun photo. The moment felt like a symbol of a future that once seemed impossible, one where they were all safe and hopeful. One afternoon, Daniel and Amelia were at the community center for the official opening of the tech initiative. Camera crews from local news stations were there, as well as community leaders, teachers, and even a few minor celebrities. One of them, to Daniel's shock, was Oprah Winfrey, who had heard about Cassandra's philanthropic efforts through a mutual acquaintance. The media presence was a huge boost, giving the initiative a spotlight that could attract further donations and grants. When Oprah approached Cassandra, congratulating her, Cassandra humbly introduced Daniel and Amelia. Oprah smiled warmly, sharing a few encouraging words about how love, resilience, and community support could transform lives. The cameras clicked, capturing the moment. Daniel felt a surreal sense of pride, not just for Cassandra, but for himself and Amelia. They were part of something bigger now. That evening, after the event, Cassandra and Daniel found a quiet corner in the otherwise bustling community center. She rested a hand on his shoulder. "Look where we are," she said softly. "It's amazing." He nodded, glancing around the bright, colorful room filled with new computers and eager kids. "Yeah, it really is." They laughed, recalling the first time they'd met her angry, him desperate, both at Jerry Klein's shabby dealership. So much had changed in such a short time. Fate, or perhaps sheer coincidence, had brought them together, only to reveal how intertwined their destinies could become. In the following weeks, Daniel and Cassandra settled into a quietly fulfilling routine. Their once chaotic lives now intersected in gentle, reassuring ways. Cassandra often stopped by Daniel's small apartment to help Amelia with her art projects, while Daniel took on a growing role in her newly launched foundation. Gradually, their bond deepened, shaped by mutual respect and the countless challenges they had overcome together. Even Daniel's ex-wife, Victoria, took cautious note of their closeness, unsure how to respond to the unspoken warmth developing between them. Despite their busy schedules, Cassandra felt an urgent need to visit her late father's grave. One bright Saturday morning, the three of them, Cassandra, Daniel, and Amelia, piled into the repaired Rolls-Royce, setting off for the Indiana cemetery. When they arrived, a hush fell over the group. Cassandra laid a bouquet of lilies on the gravestone marked James Moore, apologizing for the lost time and vowing to honor his legacy. Daniel stood protectively at her side, while Amelia held Cassandra's hand, quietly sharing in her grief. As they left, Cassandra handed the keys to Daniel, insisting he drive the vintage car back, a tender gesture of trust that made his heart swell. Soon after returning to Detroit, Cassandra's foundation, dedicated to teaching tech skills to underprivileged youth, officially opened its doors. Cameras flashed as local reporters and community leaders gathered to celebrate this promising initiative. Among the guests was none other than Oprah Winfrey, who had heard about Cassandra's philanthropic plans through a mutual contact. During her brief visit, Oprah congratulated Cassandra on transforming hardship into hope. Daniel stood nearby, grateful but still astounded by how far they had all come. Around the same time, the class action lawsuit against Jerry Klein concluded in a settlement. Dozens of customers, including Daniel, received compensation for the dealership's unethical practices. Though not a fortune, Daniel's share covered a few lingering debts and gave him a small financial cushion. Meanwhile, Cassandra's legal victory over her father's contested estate allowed her to channel more resources into the foundation, expanding its reach beyond Detroit. One late afternoon, Cassandra called Daniel to the parking lot behind their bustling community center. Parked beside the freshly polished Rolls-Royce was a new SUV, modest yet reliable. She held out the keys, explaining that the foundation had arranged for him to pay off the vehicle interest-free, essentially serving as a company car for his outreach and events work. Overcome by gratitude, Daniel hesitated, but Cassandra squeezed his hand, reminding him that they'd each been saved by another's generosity more than once. They stood in the fading sunlight, a wordless understanding passing between them as Amelia scampered around the new car, admiring its clean interior. This was their full circle, a story that had begun with desperation now glowed with possibility. Together, Daniel and Cassandra had not only found stability, but discovered a love and partnership grounded in empathy, hope, and the quiet determination to face life's challenges side by side. Who could have guessed that a single father's simple act of kindness would spark such an incredible chain of events? Daniel and Cassandra both started out at rock bottom, he with overdue bills and a failing car, she with inherited burdens and a stolen Rolls-Royce. Yet together, they found hope where others saw hopelessness, discovered justice where wrongdoing thrived, and kindled a love forged in adversity. Their story reminds us that when empathy meets opportunity, the impossible can happen. Thank you for joining this remarkable journey of resilience, redemption, and the quiet power of kindness. If this story moved you, please hit the like button, share it to spread the message of hope, and subscribe for more real-life drama fiction that proves everyday acts of compassion can change lives. Your support helps keep these stories alive, so remember to like, share, and subscribe. Together, we can inspire hope for everyone.